Welcome back, YouTube. Today, we're going to be covering the next 3 of Donald Trump's 20 campaign promises. The 2024 presidential election is just around the corner, and states remain split between Harris and Trump. With the whirlwind blitz of media coverage tainted by party bias on either side, I'm here to bring you just the facts.
3 years after the pandemic forced employees to work from home, the technologies that made that happen are still revolutionizing the way we do business. And what we saw during COVID is just the beginning. This gets around the H-1B visa problem a little bit. I mean, companies can literally have people doing work elsewhere.
Every year, foreign outsourcing companies import thousands of foreign guest workers using H-1B visas. This is because domestic companies seek offshore talent and skilled workers from countries such as China and India for their low-cost pools of highly skilled workers. This has been a common business practice for large companies since the 1980s, where foreign outsourcing companies cut deals with American companies to outsource American jobs. The U.S. company then gives notice to their domestic workers to train new workers that will overtake their jobs and are forced to sign away their rights to sue or criticize the company when they're fired. By this measure of cost-cutting labor, companies have benefited with profit growth. But now that competition has increased for the services of outsourced and offshored workers, they are realizing their value and increasing their demand. Compensation for foreign workers now either matches or exceeds pay in America and Europe. This tactic of cutting out the American worker has created foreign market growth, while our working class suffers with job displacement and allowed foreign firms to have a great deal of insight into the United States companies' processes, creating more market competition. While good for consumers, this has created a weakened view of American manufacturing abroad. Common sense tells us clearly that if we don't have domestic manufacturing and low inflation, not only will our economy be at the mercy of foreign nations, but our towns, communities, and people cannot thrive. President Trump's economic policy to end inflation and return manufacturing jobs is not only what the American economy and American workers need right now, it's also what they want right now.
Tipping really became popular after the Civil War, when formerly enslaved Black Americans went into service positions like waiters and railroad porters.
And the railroad industry deliberately paid them low wages on account of their ability to work for tips.
The idea of tipping is based upon the consumer of goods or services paying an additional percentage of their bill to compensate a worker for those goods received or services rendered. Since most service industry employees are paid below minimum wage, their tips earned are expected to make up for the low pay by matching or exceeding minimum wage. And if the tips fail to meet that minimum, the business is then expected to compensate them per hours worked what they should have earned if they were being paid minimum wage in the first place. Donald Trump proposes no tax on tips and large tax cuts for workers. News much in favor for relieving some burden to the average working class citizen. A promise so good that his opposition has taken this as part of her own campaign promise list. But, as welcome as this is, it does raise a few questions.
Back in 2018, roughly $38 billion was reported as actual gratuity compensation. The issue becomes, would a tax collecting shortfall that results from not taxing those tips be good or bad for the federal budget, especially because there is so much focus on the ballooning deficit and national debt levels?
Considering we send $46.6 billion of aid to Ukraine yearly and over $14 billion to Israel already since October 7th, I'm no expert, but I'm sure we could manage the $40 billion tax deficit from taxes received on tips with budgeted spending on things like foreign aid.
As we wage the war on terror overseas, we're also going after the terrorists here at home. And one of the most important tools we have used to protect the American people is the Patriot Act.
The USA Patriot Act was a U.S. legislation passed by Congress in response to the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks and signed into law by President George W. Bush in October 2001. Passed 45 days after 9/11 in the name of national security, the Patriot Act was the first of many changes to surveillance laws that made it easier for the government to spy on ordinary Americans by expanding the authority to monitor phone and email communications, collect bank and credit reporting records, and track the activity of innocent Americans on the internet. The USA Patriot Act is considered unconstitutional and an example of governmental abuse of power, limiting certain freedoms for its citizens. By its provisions for certification and mandatory detention, it contravenes the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of due process by law.
But never forget, our enemies want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you, and in the end, they're not after me, they're after you. I just happen to be standing in their way.
With near-daily school shootings, rising racial and socioeconomic tensions, and political unrest the world over, it's only a matter of time until something breaks and is used as a Trojan horse to pass much-needed and desired legislation on hot-button issues that may contain hidden agendas that limit more and more of our freedoms. Trump's promise to defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms, is a massive undertaking that will require substantial effort and political might to never allow sneaky detriments to our freedoms to pass through in the disguise of things like national security or gun reform. Republicans promise to hold accountable those who have misused the power of government to unjustly prosecute their political opponents. They also promise to declassify government records, root out wrongdoers, and fire corrupt employees. They also plan to ban the federal government from colluding with anyone to censor lawful speech, defund institutions engaged in censorship, and hold accountable all bureaucrats involved with illegal censoring. They vow to protect free speech online. Republicans also vow to protect the right not only to worship according to the dictates of conscience, but also to act in accordance with those beliefs, not just in places of worship, but in everyday life. To protect religious liberty, Republicans support a new federal task force on fighting anti-Christian bias that will investigate all forms of illegal discrimination, harassment, and persecution against Christians in America. Republicans will also leave abortion legislation up to the states to decide upon protecting 14th Amendment right to life and liberty with due process, while supporting mothers and policies that advance prenatal care, access to birth control, and fertility treatments. Also, they pledge to keep men out of women's sports, ban taxpayer funding for sex change surgeries, and stop taxpayer-funded schools for promoting gender transition to children. Elections will be made more secure and open only to legal living citizens of the U.S., denying voting rights to illegal aliens. The territories of Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico are of vital importance to national security and are welcome to a greater participation in the political process. Thank you all for watching and listening. I will be back with part 3 of Trump's 20 campaign promises. Don't forget to like, comment, and please subscribe, as it helps this small channel grow, and that helps me out so much, more than you can know. So, hit that subscribe bell icon, and I'll see you later.